Greetings and welcome to the broadcast. Well, here's a strange one, the Kandahar Giant. This thing's been featured quite a bit the last 5 or 10 years. If we were to Google or do a start page search, I'll do it for you right here at 2 or 3 deep, you'll see the same theme comes up, that the Kandahar Giant was indeed killed, according to reports by special forces. It killed multiple special forces soldiers and was flown out, and kind of almost like a Roswell, New Mexico thing. However, lately it's been coming up quite a bit, and people have been talking. Now, if we do a YouTube search, not a Google, but YouTube search like this, I'll just give you a little sample of the first 2 or 3 pages. We'll look at this a little bit deeper. It's interesting. It could be either a Roswell, New Mexico thing, or there could be some truth to it. In fact, let's take a virtual trip over to Afghanistan to kind of set the stage here. When you land, you're going to go right down to the Kandahar area. There's a lot of mountains here where the special forces guys do their stuff. Go to the university, you kind of look in the background. This is not truly as rough as the mountains get. It gets a little worse than this. If we look around a little bit, the Kandahar area, we're going to see some dirt ground, some dirt sidewalks, and some nice-looking buildings. And then, of course, there's the feel-good photos put out by the military like this. That's not a giant. That's just a real tall, like a basketball player. And bless little Canada, they have to soil the infidel, they call it, putting something like this up, which would be almost, to them, like coming in and putting a swastika to see something like that on their soil. But that's the way they think. Now, the way the story goes, and we're going to have somebody else talk about this, I'm going to come and do a wrap-up with some more photos and analysis, is the guys are out, this thing, and you're going to hear about how it butchers the special forces guys, and they get his body, and they fly it back. At this point, I just simply have to say I'm not sure. There's things that go on like this. Sometimes when people leak information, you wonder about it, and then you look at the Bible, and guys like this come out of the woodwork and see a giant everywhere. If you look at the Bible, let's just take singular, the word giant itself. It's 19 times listed in the Bible. Giants, plural, with an S, it comes up about 11 times. So they're in the Bible. Well, I'm going to take 2 or 3 at random. This has been around forever. The giants were in the earth, and they came down and impregnated women. The book of Genesis tells us there were giants, and they're mighty men. So, okay, we've got that. Also, Moses was involved killing giants, in addition to David. I'll let you just read these things here. You can also see in the next 1 or 2 how the giants had 6 fingers and 6 toes, and this Kandahar giant is said to have had 6 fingers and 6 toes. We're going to listen to a guy who says he was there in just a moment. And we look, as far as time stamping them, you can see about them being bred. Like the giant was born here, the giant had kids, this guy had a son. So there's a literary link to giants in the Bible, pretty strong. Some guys actually make a whole ministry out of it. What we're going to do is let somebody talk to us right now, this guy, and then I'm going to come back and wrap it up and do some deeper analysis. So here he is. This guy's going to talk a lot about this Kandahar giant. L.A. Marzulli gets ready to interview one of the shooters.
The reason I bring this up is because when I showed this lance to the shooter, he commented that this artifact was similar to what the giant of Kandahar was wielding. There is another dynamic I want to discuss before we run the clip from Watchers 10 DNA, which, by the way, has become viral. The fact that this giant had 6 fingers and 6 toes, as well as flaming red hair. There was also a stench that was as powerful as a skunk, but according to the shooter, smelled more like a pile of rotting corpses. Here's the clip, and you can decide for yourself if giants are alive and well and living in the present day. You were in Afghanistan in 2002, and you were called into a very remote section of Afghanistan because a patrol had basically gone missing.
Exactly.
Okay, there's no villages around for miles. So it's very remote.
Yeah, very remote. So we flew in. It's about 4 kilometers. We're hiking through the same area where they were supposed to make one of their checkpoints, one of their rally points. And before we left, there was all kinds of what happened with the ambush. But that was even odd because at the point of the ambush, we called from any close air support, something. Okay, there was no calls made, just off the bridge. So we're coming down a mountainside, and there was a nice path, built path. As we bent around this corner, you could see this opening of the cave. There's a cave. So we're coming around, and then I see there's a lot of rocks, which is another oddity, and then bone matter. I'm not close enough to identify what kind of bones, but I did see something I knew was a piece of our communications equipment. So instantly we're thinking ambush, maybe animal, could be anything. There was enough room in front of this cave, but it had a sheer drop off. But there was enough room that we actually got into a decent dispersal in case of ambush.
You see something coming out of the cave, and it's moving with a speed and agility that catches you off guard.
Everybody. And he comes out. It was a man at least 12 to 15 feet in height. This is a monster, red beard, and his hair was long past the shoulder, a scarlet red, and Dan runs at him and starts to broke all of us into the reality. Because it was so real.
Now your training is kicking in.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
muscle memory, that complete muscle memory. While Dan is moving at him, another bro of mine's laying down fire, and I start firing. It's pure as day. He's now got him on this pipe. It went through him. He's still got him. And he's coming after more. We all just clicked in. I don't know what it was, but I remember we're all like, shoot him in the face. Shoot him in the face. Our weapons components were in force. We had 308s. And we had Barrett 50s. This is sounding longer than it took. We're talking 30 seconds. And he's taking multiple hits. And is still moving.
He talked about this giant being 1,100 pounds, anywhere from 10 to 15 feet long, and it was killed. It was apparently shot somewhere in a cave in Afghanistan, but before it was shot, it lunged at several of our troops, our soldiers. It may have even gorged somebody. It was just a bizarre story, and it just sounds like the Nephilim from the Bible.
Anything of it, and come to find out that the person that they killed actually was 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on their hand and digits on their feet, and had red hair, and a special unit had come in and wanted this target.
When I arrived at the venue where I was speaking, I phoned Richard and I told him we had yet another witness to the giant story. The initial story that was told to us was related verbatim by this man as fact. We then interviewed both of these men for our film, Watchers 10 DNA. There was also a dynamic of the story that I want to point out to you, and it's this. A while back, I interviewed Chief Joseph Riverwind right here on PPS Report. The Chief and I spoke about what I have come to call the Nephilim Lance. This artifact was discovered in the backwoods of Michigan by an outdoorsman named Bob Shelley. Bob gave the original lance to the Chief, and I'm holding a reproduction of it, a 1-to-1 reproduction of it, here as I speak. This weighs about 8.5 pounds. It's very heavy, and when you take this and lash it to a pole, it would be very difficult for a 6-foot man to wield. And yet,
just drop her in here with an actual biblical verse about the lance that Goliath, the giant that David killed in the Bible. What this guy's talking about, all these dimensions and weights seem to work out from what I can tell. Now, we've got another guy coming up here for a little bit more information. Then I'm going to come back and do some more analysis. Let's take a look at this thing.
Rather than be somewhat peaceful, but I guess that comes with the territory.
Dan was dead. Okay. And Wyatt's a good man. Probably one of the best men I know, now dead. Before I'd left, they were already starting what they call a 9 line, which is a medevac request. They're sending out a medevac request, then all of a sudden it's not a medevac request. All of a sudden we had a helicopter show up because, like I told you, it was a large precipice and a sheer drop. So the helicopter just came up from the drop. They had dropped netting, which is like cargo netting. It's like squares, and we were told we had to bundle him up. And we get another bigger helicopter, but it's almost like a Jolly Green Giant used to look back in the day that could get, through this area. Because the mountains, you gotta remember, Chinooks could only go in certain places because they had enough lift. And so we got him on there. The thing was too big. We couldn't move it. It smelled worse than a skunk. A corpse that's been around for a while.
really fell.
Oh, it was like a combination because of the, how do you put that, the persistence of a skunk smell. But once the helicopter came in, dropped its little hook, and off he goes. The communication was sent out that we had a very large, possible human creature.
There you are in the hills of Afghanistan. How many troop members are you with?
We had 6 on my crew. When we say hills of Afghanistan, for us, we did not fly into the wilderness. We actually flew into a base. I guess this thing was transloaded out of the mountains by a CH-47. But I could see that it did have the 6 fingers. I remember taking my foot up and placing it up next to its foot, and it was extremely large. We estimated it at about 12 feet, give or take. What I can tell you is the weight of the thing. Basically, it was approximately 1,500 pounds when it was getting on the aircraft. Now, if you take away the pallet weight and all the rigging that we had to hold this thing down, we figured it was around 1,100 pounds.
Of course, we're upset. That's a given. Okay. We lost a very good guy. But add to that, you're discussing something that even in our after-action report, they're saying rewrite it. And we had to rewrite it the way they wanted.
How many fingers?
6 toes.
6 toes.
And the nails were weird because if you see somebody that ever has, I don't know what it's called, but it's
Like a fungus on
their nails, how they get pointy and they're like gnarly, that's what they look like.
As we showed you in the clip, the radio operator checked in and gave the report, and the unit was told to stand by as Central Command was about to dispatch 2 helicopters to them. They were told that the Giant would be loaded on one of the choppers, and then they would follow in the other chopper for debriefing. The shooter told us that when the chopper landed, they loaded the Giant into a very large cargo net. The first chopper towing the Giant left, and then they boarded the second helicopter and followed. When they returned to their base at the Kandahar province in Afghanistan, they were debriefed and told to keep all of this under wraps. They were forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which essentially would prohibit them from talking about this to anyone. It is with great reluctance on the shooter's part that he has come forward. He believes that people have the right to know what is going on this planet, that the supernatural is real, and that the startling and unsettling fact that a remnant of a legendary Nephilim are still on the earth may be. I mean, if there are 15-footers or 18-footers roaming the planet, and our military has brought them down, I mean, we have a right as American citizens. I mean, this isn't classified military stuff. This is something that we need to know, and it points back to the biblical prophetic narrative. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, here's my personal opinion. My personal opinion is if it points that the Bible's accurate, they don't want it. If it goes against Darwinian evolution, it's not to be spoken of.
So you're out in the boonies running around looking for high-value targets?
Correct. Okay. And we're doing those operations, and as we're getting into firefights, we're getting into different scrimmages, you want to put it that way, we would come back to the base, and we started hearing this rumor about a unit that killed this, what they started calling this really tall person. At first, I didn't think anything of it. And come to find out that the person that they killed actually was 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on their hand and digits on their feet, and had red hair. And a special unit had come in and wanted this target. Well, we'd heard that they had killed this thing inside a cave, or the mouth of a cave. And it was common knowledge among the military to hear this.
And when you say common knowledge, what do you mean? I mean, how does that work?
Years later, come to find out, when I had returned from Afghanistan and had met other military members that had not been there in the operations with me, if you would bring up the Giant of Kandahar, they knew about it. When you first hear it, you're thinking like, this has got to be a joke. This has got to be a hoax. But then after things go down a certain way and you keep hearing it, you start to realize it's not a joke.
Okay, folks, you can see right here in the Bible, there's a spiritual dimension quite often, some of the things we're talking about, and spirits coming up, the Euphrates area. If I may, let me share with you a way to gather intelligence on a shoestring here. Let's go back to Korea. Korea was a war that many people says you can't win it. We're ill-prepared. We have no national interest. There's no exit strategy. It'll be a bloodbath. And they said, no, that's not true at all. We have a complete plan under control. and the Reds are doing this, we've got to get going. And so what you can do is by seeing how they react to leakers, to people who are, say the guy was a communist, he hated everything, but he let 2 or 3 nuggets of truth come out. You can go over and glean, almost like breaking soap bubbles in the ocean when it washes up on the shore there, and you can get intelligence on a shoestring. I'll show you how here. First thing here to do is you get a pretty boy like this, a pretty face, and he says, we got to get these communists out. It's going to, really, he has no plan, and the communists were right. There was no exit strategy. The guys that were sent over to Korea froze. It was just a mess. But you got to get helicopters. The first thing you do is you get helicopters. You get a big thing going like this, and then you have to start showing atrocities. And so you show some atrocities on the other side, like Cali during Vietnam and this guy. And then you show atrocities on the other side, like this guy being beheaded. And then you do what you promised you wouldn't do, is you rip the nation apart and you divide it to North and South Korea in this case. Next up, Vietnam. The people say, don't go over there. Don't go to Vietnam. We don't want you there. You're just going to rip it up. You have no compelling national interest. You're going to cut it in half. You're going to cause bloodshed on both sides and all kinds of bad stuff. So what you do, how did Vietnam and Korea get stopped? By leakers, by people who came back with the truth, and people who, like you're seeing on this YouTube thing, when you see people at Google, these guys are sources for this stuff. And they were right, weren't they? It was a quagmire. They did nothing but butcher people on both sides of the thing and split. How do you do it? Same old thing. You get a couple pretty boy faces. They get the helicopters, the dark helicopters. They do some strikes. Then they show the atrocities just like this on both sides. Stay with me now on this thing. But here a little different. My, what are we going to do? I'm into this thing, a lot of bloodshed. And so, if you can believe it, this next thing is a pathetic mission statement for the blood of 50 to 100,000 people dead, and to this day sprayed with Agent Orange. Isn't this pathetic? Read that. Well, when people question this mission statement, that's the kind of intelligence you want to file away and watch the blurb kind of grow, because unless you have a bank account or you have some resources, and you can follow stories like this from your armchair and gather the intelligence and keep notes. Well, let's do one more, shall we? How about Guatemala? Now you do this one with me. Well, the United States just went down to Guatemala and shot a bunch of kids up with syphilis, with gonorrhea, with hereditary, denied them medical care, called them prostitutes and everything else. Finally, when the United States got caught, they had to send Hillary Clinton down to apologize to Guatemala. Now, they say only 80 or 90 people were killed by these hellacious experiments. But how did it come out? How did the truth finally come out? Well, it came out with alternative sources like WikiLeaks, like leakers on YouTube, like leakers on Google. All this stuff got the truth out. Of course, it's quickly forgotten about. And by the way, these guys were not disbanded. They're still alive and active today. Many people believe. And you would do well to pay attention to some of this stuff. May we do one more? But I'm going to show you how to get to the truth of the Kandahar giant. I don't know the truth, but I can sure pop some soap bubbles here, like by using these templates of deceit and betrayal that I'm showing you by whoever the powers that be with any nation. Let's take a look at Iraq. What do you do now? You got it? Say it with me now. You get a pretty boy face. He talks about all this tragedy going on, and he lies. He says there's weapons of mass destruction. We absolutely know. Oh, wait a minute. There were no weapons of mass destruction yesterday, today, or tomorrow. It was a bold-faced lie. You got a lot of people killed, and how does it stop? Abu Ghraib and all those atrocities? By leakers, guys talking off the record, by this fringe group, what they call tinfoil hat crowd. If you can winnow through that, so by the way, right now Iraq is a friggin' mess. You might as well have three lines drawn through it, unlike South Korea and North Korea and Vietnam. So I'm going to show you these techniques, and then you take it from there. You decide about the Kandahar giant using these examples that I've shown you. And then after that, I'm going to show you a wild one that I want to be kind of careful here. This CERN, let's take CERN and the Kandahar giant. There's a lot going on using this technique, denials, leakers, stuff coming out, and it takes a little bit to put it together. How about CERN right here? Fake human sacrifices or real human sacrifices, all kinds of occult rituals, witchcraft going in at the CERN Hadron Collider and the God particle and trying to open up. This guy right here, he was paid to come over and perform a ritual at the CERN Collider during a time. Code of Mendes. There's a guy inside right down there that's wrapped up in simulated plastic like he's choking. They've got simulated naked bodies in a pool. This is CERN Hadron Collider stuff. And here what it is these, we're going to have somebody talk about these in just a moment. This god of death, the Shiva stuff. I think you're going to enjoy it. The light hits just right for the ritual at CERN. How about, then look at that thing. Now let's look at the deal. Is it a 666 conspiracy? We have people showing their logo means 666. I'm going to go ahead now and get ready to just actually let you take a look at some things. We're going to have somebody do some talking yet once again to help us look at this thing. Isn't this a monster? Right from the pit of hell, something like that. The god of Shiva, god of death, separating a man's soul and a woman's soul away from them. Here's the three things: Father, Son, Holy Spirit in them. You see the three faces there? Anyway, I'm going to have someone talk about some of this stuff, this CERN, and then we're going to go one more level deep, and then we'll let you do the analysis. You take these tools that we're talking about right here, and just by reading media reports and how the media, the controlled media, and how whoever's controlling the nations, and it could be in 1914 or 1974, how they react to this stuff. And by how they react to it, how you pop those soap bubbles of whistleblowers, that gives you kind of just a quick peek into the main line of the actual truth scenario. Take care. Let's get ready to take a look at one more. And here's the actual ritual.
And this leads me full circle to what I believe to be the supreme, hidden purpose of the Large Hadron Collider and CERN. Recall that the Celtic deity Cernunnos, the horned lord of the underworld, represents the cycle of death and rebirth, of destruction and restoration. I believe that the Luciferian priesthood behind the thrones of the European Union and the United Nations intend to use CERN as the key to literally open the gates of hell in order to release the gods that have been imprisoned there, those fallen watchers and arcane entities bound with chains in the abyss of Tartarus. Their prime objective is the restoration of the Golden Age, when the gods mingled themselves with the seed of men, and their hybrid offspring ruled the earth. All of our research points inexorably to this grand conspiracy. It is my contention that the earth is even now being slowly terraformed via chemtrailing, HARP, and other such clandestine programs in order to reconstitute the conditions that existed on the planet before the flood of Noah, in anticipation of the hybrid race that is coming.
Okay, here's a quick Bible verse. Talks about there are angels down there reserved in chains. Something's going to happen later on. We've been to Kandahar. We've showed you some tools. And we've also kind of stretched our boundaries over here to the CERN things going on. What I'd like to do right now, I'm going to close this part out early, and I'm going to put a tinfoil hat crowd thing on the right. So if this Kandahar giant business, you can interpret it yourself. The next one I'm going to let go, and then I'm going to be silent and going to sign off. You've got it's an abstract, almost like fuzzy logic. When I talk about taking bits and pieces of leakers, bits and pieces of intelligence, how a nation tries to release statements in the press of denial and things like that. Just start working on it a little bit. You'll be surprised how close you get to the truth when ultimately revelations are made and ultimate disclosures of the truth come out. Kandahar giant? I don't know. But what I do know is you need to read the Bible cover to cover. I'm telling you, the best thing you can do is get a King James Version Bible. If you don't like that, get a Geneva Bible. You don't like that, get a Webster Bible. Other than that, I wouldn't get anything but those. But the King James is the best. Read it cover to cover. Half the stuff I'm doing here, it'll come right to you quickly. You'll come to all these verses will pop up, the scripture, like reading a storybook almost, and then you hear about God's requirements. God has advice, and he has some requirements, and he has some rules and regulations. And so you can kind of decide for yourself. But there's what they call the born-again experience, and I apologize, it's just been twisted into a wet knot, so to speak. in most of the churches, pretty much in the United States, Canada, and out there now. You believe in Jesus Christ, what he did on the cross. It doesn't matter if that giant comes out or anything like that. Jesus, you died for me, just like the thief on the cross. Jesus, in a sense, I believe, I trust. Will you take me to heaven? Answer, yes. It's pretty simple. Folks, stand by and God bless you. Let's get a little bit more information for you.